Well, the recording in progress. How many times have we heard that? This is Henry Chamberlain, and I have the very special treat. I've got a chance now to chat with two very creative, energetic cartoonists, Rebecca K. Jones and Peter Morey. Thanks to both of you for chatting with me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, exactly what she said. Thanks for having us.
Very, very good. Well, we're both in a good silly mood, which is what I kind of was going for, because I'm thinking British humor. That's a very big topic we can chew on. I want to go ahead and just show some of your work. This is Peter's work, Ends Well. There's 3 issues so far of Ends Well, and then there's Cat Disco by Rebecca, and then I've got Animal. Oh, am I getting this? Animal Spirit.
There we go.
And I also have Boomerang as a PDF, and well, there's little patterns that kind of emerge because I'm looking at your work, re-looking at it, because I first looked at you guys back in 2019 when Jennifer and I went to London, and we stumbled upon your work at Orbital. Does Orbital Comics just tug at your heartstrings? Is that something that you wanted to chat about a little bit, Peter?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not massively, but it is a shame that there was a really great small press section to that shop, which is where you would have picked up our stuff. That no longer exists. That bit, which that is quite sad. But you know, it still exists as a shop, and it's got fantastic stuff there.
Yeah. Well, not to talk about that for too much, because it has its place, but yeah, that is the place that I discovered your work. I'm going to jump in and show your work, both of you guys. And so we'll do a share screen. Now here's Ends Well, so we can properly see it, all 3 issues. And it's very weird and fun and very, very distinctive. I'll let you do the honors, Peter, to chat with us a little bit about Ends Well.
Oh man, okay, yeah. So this is I would call it a memory comic with quite a bit of family history research, especially in the 3rd one. And it started, it's loosely autobiographical. That's what I say. I put a disclaimer in the front that it's a dramatization. And I think I'm starting to wake up to the notion, or the reason why I put that disclaimer in there is because I was aware of it when I started it, that any autobiography is a sort of fiction, or it's very subjective. So I wanted to highlight that I'm a sort of untrustworthy narrator, and I'm loosely basing this on things, and I'm amping up the drama a little bit where it's appropriate. So I'm sort of semi-fictionalizing things, and all the names have changed. So it centers around Enswell Farm, which is my gran, or the gran character of the clan in the story. Episode 1 on the left there is it gives an overview of a sort of crisis situation. The farm involves dogs and horses, so episode 2 picks up on the situation of the dogs and follows one in particular. His fate ends on a cliffhanger in that episode. And then episode 3 does not pick up that cliffhanger. Instead, it goes into a different tangent or a different side of the story, which is a family car journey taken in 2006 to my grandfather, or the grandfather of the clan's funeral, and then reminiscing on the way. So lots of asides, and I suppose it's like almost like a dream sequence, with the through line being the family discussion, and lots of little thought bubbles coming off, like fading into these different scenarios.
I'll make sure to throw in a few more samples. I just wanted to give people a little bit of a taste. But yeah, there's so many observational moments in your work, Peter, and as well as in your work, Rebecca. You both complement each other. There's so much to ask you about Enswell. Now, this whole idea of this farm that the granny has, that's a pretty uncommon, unusual situation, right? I mean, there aren't that many farms like that, or are there any like that?
Yeah, it is a very strange place, and I guess I do a sequence in the first one, which is looking at the oddballs and eccentrics who are attracted to this place, and the kind of magical creatures that seem to exist there for me when I was a child and when we went to visit.
Yeah.
I guess it sort of loomed large in my childhood, and my sisters as well, our whole family really, and the eccentricity there at the heart of it that came out of, as I explore in the third one, it came out of money, from a factory that was sold by my grandfather, and this sort of eccentric project of my grand's that just ran from the 50s to well, it was sold. This is a development of the story, which is going to come in episode 4, sold in 2019. She passed away after being in a home this year, January. But yeah, so yeah, it follows. It sort of delves into some of that stuff, and it's inspired by that very strange place.
Well, yeah, it's strange,
kind
but
of fun
also
place.
wonderful too, that someone can live out their passion.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there are positives and negatives to that, which are sort of delved into. Yeah.
And here's a family photo. I guess the only shot that has everyone so clearly featured in one panel.
Yeah.
And then it seems like both of you enjoy doing social commentary, and then you go even deeper into a strange, whimsical world with animals. And here's yours, Animal Spirits, which came out recently. And the animals, they're defending their rights, and they're kind of like eco-terrorists. Or what
I
would you
guess
want
so.
to,
I'm not
what
seeing
would
that.
you like to say?
I kind of sat down with it in 2019. It was like shut the door on the world and go. I took the Inktober prompts of the time, but I haven't explicitly put what they were, and used them as a prompt to do a page a day and just say what's next. So it's got this kind of the idea is to have this kind of raw energy to just doing the work in that sort of constraint. Just do one a day and just see where it goes.
Yeah.
It went in funny, strange places. It wasn't going to be called Animal Spirits in the beginning. I didn't have an overarching plan, although I did, in order to put it together, I revisited after 30 days of doing the drawings and filled it out. Maybe, I think it's a total of 60 pages, but that's cover to cover. So maybe in the narrative, it's a bit less. So I filled it out with a few pages after that and sculpted it a little bit. Yeah, maybe the idea was that the themes didn't really exist before the random stuff just came out, and then maybe themes emerged. So yeah, maybe there's an eco-terrorist thing going on there. There's certainly like the animals against the humans, isn't there?
Yeah. Have you ever done a 24-hour comic?
Yes, we both have actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of figured you might. Well,
I love that the spirit of that sort of stuff, and this is in that spirit. 24-hour comics is so tough to do. I don't show those 24-hour comics because they're extremely raw, rough.
Yeah.
But I had them for sale once in Gosh Comics, which is the other comic shop in London.
Yes.
Which is still a hub of the small press here in London. Yeah. They stopped my weird comics.
I've done
24-hour comics.
Yeah, I love 24-hour comics. I've done my fair share of them, and you're right that the end results are pretty raw. And I wouldn't say people are cheating. I think it's fair game. You do what you can during those 24 hours, and then you refine it. And then when you finally show your work, it could have been like a week, or it could be a year later.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now we come to your work, Rebecca, and this is Boomerang. And this is really just so delightful, and so many observational, wonderful moments, wonderful, quiet, funny moments. And of course, here's the job center, which is no different from what it is like here in the United States. It's very drab, very routine, very soul sucking. Would
Yeah.
you want to say a few words about Boomerang?
Yeah, so Boomerang is a project I started in 2015. And yeah, it was sort of, I think it was sort of just me trying to work out a way of sort of telling a bit of a longer story. And I think, again, I was sort of, I was trying to kind of do like a little draft page a day to myself.
I see.
And I just ended up doing all these sort of images of like this character, and sort of using like personal experiences of like when I'd graduated in 2008, and sort of remembering sort of these memories of like being unemployed and that kind of feeling of failure and that kind of drabness of kind of entering the adult world, and sort of going through all these little kind of procedural things.
Oh, sure.
And I was just making these quite sort of like mundane little drafts, and then from there I started to kind of flesh it out. I think it was I ended up doing a like graphic novel course, and it was about actually kind of starting to kind of make your actual story, like kind of doing your long-term project. And then from there I kind of, that's how I ended up starting to make it. And I suppose it's that kind of like, you've got the fantastical, but then sort of maybe you end up returning to writing what you know, and it's like realizing this, like all these kind of little mundane stories or failure, it's at least something that is a bit kind of authentic, and that kind of comes, it sort of comes through in the work. And I quite enjoyed sort of, I suppose, finding those moments of lightness and humor in like quite a sort of bleak or sort of boring situation.
Oh, absolutely. I love that one moment where you guys are, is it a proper zoo or a festival or something? There's a peregrine falcon guy, and suddenly he starts talking about the peregrine falcon, and he flies away. And you've got a whole page with the falcon just enjoying freedom, and who knows, I guess maybe he's gone. But that's a beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I suppose it was meant to be like a little kind of like family fun day in the park, where they've got these sort of random things on to sort of engage the kids or whatever. But yeah, I quite like the idea of sort of just making that like a bit of a kind of poetic moment. And people, I suppose the story of Boomerang is that she's sort of stuck at home. She hasn't, she's come home after graduating, and she's kind of back there like she's a child again. People talk about like flying the nest, so it's kind of like a bit of a kind of, like a bit of a metaphor.
Yeah, it seems like it's an eternity. These things are going to go on forever, and then all of a sudden you move on to the next phase of your life, and here's your animal crazy world of what's the name of that cat? Mogsley?
Yes.
So Mogsley is a very retiring house cat, and then decides to take a walk on the wild side with Socrates, and it's very inventive, very, very inventive stuff. Would you like to say a few words about Cat Disco?
Yeah, so Cat Disco is just sort of like I suppose like my kind of gleeful little happy place. So it's like, I don't know, if I'm kind of getting a bit too serious on something, it's quite nice to have like another story to kind of retreat to, where there's maybe less stakes involved, a bit like what Pete's saying with Animal Spirits and sort of doing a 24-hour comic. Like you kind of just let it go.
You serialized it as well, didn't you? Originally, it was every 2 weeks.
So it was kind of like forcing myself to get something out, and then it's kind of like, once you've got that deadline, you don't care if it's not perfect. It's like you're just going to put it up there, and then at the end you have like a body of work. But I just I don't know, it just always used to make me happy, and then I think like sort of, I don't know, I haven't done any in a while, but it's I think it's cats as well. Like they seem to bring a lot of joy to people. So
Yeah.
like anyone who sees like a cat on paper
Well,
seems
it's
to quite
wonderful.
enjoy it.
It's wonderful how you completely followed through it and created your own cartoony cats. The same with you, Peter. You both have got a mastery of fully taking advantage of what you can do with comics. Now, I wanted to, there's a laundry list of things we could chat about. I want to ask you about British humor again. Now, we here in the States, we see it as weird, but deliciously weird. And it goes from droll, dry humor all the way to wacky, absurd humor. Do you think that the British creatives are very self-aware and they kind of work on brands, sometimes play it up, or what thoughts might any of you have on that?
Oh,
Do you have anything?
I don't know.
I think there's sorry, it's a little bit of two things. One is it's just kind of the way some of us are.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, yeah, a little bit of both. Yeah, some of it is played up. Yeah, for sure. Do you think that?
Yeah, I suppose like a lot of probably like a lot of influences might be kind of rooted in British humour, and maybe like you don't consciously realise it, and then and I don't know, and then someone sort of notices it, and then you kind of realise that it's there.
I think you've got this really dark humour that's centered around the everyday, and then these moments of awkwardness that come out of it. But also some of that's very influenced by like how the newsreaders speak, or and the quirks of that, and how that relates to real life and the friction between those things and stuff like that.
Yeah, I suppose I do quite like to kind of play on an awkward silence, or sort of I don't know, just have lots of moments of little misunderstandings and stuff like that. And
yeah, it's in Boomerang, isn't it, with the newsreader at the beginning? You've got it's sort of bringing out the themes through that.
And I guess you have it with your family characters, sort of saying things that are unexpected, or
I think a lot of my humor probably does come from that family, that eccentricity that has existed.
Oh, sure.
We've all got a similar sense of humor there, I think. Maybe it's a kind of but because the situation was always a bit larger than life, and often centered, like most of us in the family didn't really enjoy being around horses, at least. There's a kind of gallows humor almost, of like making light of the situation kind of thing, which I think exists in Britain as well. Definitely, maybe that's something to do with the weather.
Maybe so.
Everyone's used to making light of the weather. But both of us have done this a bit, but I went full on into the comedy scene a few years ago, taking bits of paper and sticking them up at the back of comedy shows, so that I was sort of partly on display, drawing my response to comedians. So I think I absorbed a lot of, I had my education in comedy.
Oh,
there.
That's very interesting. Well, as a very young person, self-aware that I was innocent, didn't really know what was going to unfold. I knew for sure, though, that a creative life for me it was painting to start with, and creative writing. There weren't any comics classes you could really take. Maybe a few correspondence courses, but back in my day when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, there were no comics courses taught on the college level, none of that. So it was you had to be very persistent to really get into cartooning, and you had to know that it wasn't just cartooning, because cartooning is such a broad term. And I wasn't particularly hip. I don't know. There was just a bent I had towards wanting to do a certain thing, play with words and pictures, which sounds so trite, but it's true, isn't it?
Yeah,
definitely.
You can get a kind of friction between the two, or a relationship between the two, that often lends itself to humor.
And I've heard so many people say that as well, with and say that thing about words and pictures, and even though it's sort of the most simple way you can describe it, that's kind of like that's
kind of collaging, isn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of the essence of it, and that's kind of what people often seem to look for. It's like people enjoy writing, and they enjoy making pictures, and they want to combine them.
Back in the day, you would have had, surely you would have had, Linda Barry maybe, and those guys.
Oh, sure.
Coming up.
Well, yeah, there was
Yeah.
definitely the underground comics going back to Crumb, Linda Barry, of course. Mouse had already been out, and there were many examples. And of course, in the, because I'd taken a trip to Europe many years back, and I discovered Tardy and Blutch and other French cartoonists, and I guess it was Jeffrey, not Jeffrey Brown, the other Jeffrey, but there were plenty of examples. Yes, I mean, Love and Rockets, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
But you had to seek them out because there was no internet. That was the big thing.
Yeah.
You had to go into the shops. You had to ask around. You had to stumble around a little bit.
Yeah.
I
think that's still a lot the case.
It is. You have to know what you're looking for.
I mean, Orbital, for example, that's what was so great about that room, was it was just full of all these different voices, self-publishing. And Gosh has a small press section that's similar to that. And then you've got these comics fairs that are sort of opened up to all these, different voices, different creators. And you can kind of wander around there and do exactly that. You can kind of magpie a little bit what you're into and really find the stuff. Yeah.
Now, I went through the whole fine arts program at the University of Houston, where you would graduate from one block to the next, and you finally have the honor of being in senior block, and that's when you're treated like a serious artist, and on and on. And the professors would kind of like a cat batting around with a play toy. So what do you plan to do with this knowledge once you have it? And I said, well, I don't know. Perhaps I'll teach. And one very mischievous, maybe sadistic professor said, well, good luck with that. You're not going to become a professor. So, well, okay, maybe I'm not going to be. Before I could finish my sentence, they always had this pat answer. Well, you can always do art therapy. And I suppose you could, but now there's more options. Like it's been up and down with illustration. Sometimes people over the years have said illustration is completely dead. Now it's like a renaissance. But you, Peter, you have a particular niche. You do live illustration. And did that come about from your comedy connection, or can you maybe chat?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was doing at comedy shows, and that's what I now do in different contexts, more, I guess, education, a lot of business and research kind of contexts. But what can I say? We both met on the same master's course down in Falmouth in Cornwall, and that live illustration stuff was something I just started investigating. I saw that it was around. I think I read there's this illustration magazine called Veroom, which is sort of like it's just it's like I don't know, universities seem to have it. It's a bit like it's almost like a trade publication, but within an art school setting. Anyway, so I read an article on somebody who was doing that, and I thought it was really cool. So yeah, I just started, jumped in to try and practice it as much as possible. And one of my interests at the time was comedy, so that was a place to practice making a live response to what someone says. So you're illustrating spoken word rather than text.
I imagine specifically improv.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, what I would be doing is improv, but in a visual form. It's a strange thing because it's a very verbal medium, stand-up comedy, and it's very focused and on that person on the stage. And when you're making a response to it that is silent, you can kind of go alongside it in a strange way, and then at the end of the gig, suddenly you're noticed. And then you're there drawing, and then suddenly people go, and they maybe they relive it. But at the time, people really liked, the people who really liked it were the comedians themselves. They liked it as a souvenir of their gig. So often Edinburgh Fringe shows was one of the things that I was drawing at a lot. But yeah, no, it's a different thing that I do now. It's more like it's like it's a way of facilitating some kind of learning, or some, you know, I guess commemorating a discussion. But they're often, it's strange the situations you end up in. Yeah, so conferences and things like that are the main sort of forum for that kind of thing. You give them like an illustrated summary. Yeah.
Well, I know it takes this particular type of a person to be able to sustain that, because it can be dry. I know quite a bit about it. I think in the United States, Americans can get more caught up in branding it. Like you hear sketch notes, it's all about the doodle, the magic of the doodle. I think in Europe, it might be more organic. It might be more in the blood, where people just are more, I'm not sure how to say it, maybe more honest about it, more accepting of it.
Yeah, that might just be me right now. But yeah, no, the sketchnoting thing is definitely one of the places it lives. I think in the UK, it's known much more as scribing. So you get a lot of companies or people and agencies focusing in on that as a sort of branded. I don't know if it's branded, but there's a name for the activity. So going there as like an Egyptian scribe and picking up on stuff. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you both about, and this is something that I chatted with Glenn Head, who's a well regarded cartoonist. He's a little bit like me. He's younger than the underground, so kind of in the middle. A Gen X, the Gen Xers are kind of in the middle. We're too young to be underground cartoonists. We're out a little bit off the page as far as the most recent stuff. But the old model, which I still think exists, is you'd draw a few pages, you create a very short work, and then you anticipate that down the road, because maybe you're still not quite ready to do a graphic novel, but the goal seems to always be the graphic novel. Maybe us Americans, I'm not trying to be dismissive about us Americans. I love being an American, but us Americans seem to be more competitive, and we seem to need to have a goal. So we need to have something we're running towards something. And I think in the case of cartoonists that are at the indie level, they want to, the highest level, the goal is the graphic novel. Do you think that's the case over for you guys?
Yeah,
big time.
Yeah, definitely. I think we sort of came of age at the point where, like, you know, it was just getting talked about more that, you know, comics could be serious, that comics could sort of you know, be considered an art form. I think that was sort of just breaking at the point when I was at university, but not everyone had caught on. And
me too.
Yeah,
Mouse and Persepolis and Joe Sacco's work, particularly Palestine, they were my first kind of intros to that.
But there's maybe a bit of snobbery in it as well, though, if you know what I mean. The sort of you know, it's like, oh well, if you know, if you want sort of you know, if you want the middle class professionals to read it, you call it a graphic novel, and then
it's a branding thing.
Know it's okay,
like you said about the sketch
read words and pictures.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was all kind of starting to explode at that point where we were sort of leaving university, and probably both respectively realizing that we wanted to do comics. So I feel like that's kind of very ingrained, like the graphic novel is the sort of pinnacle of what. And then you're like, wait, what? How many pages?
Well,
and then
we both got our long form projects though, so we are doing that objective thing, but it feels very much like a far off, you know, you take years to do those things.
Yeah, it's something like, what? Oh, you
Can't just
it
do
doesn't
that.
you can't just get it done in a year, like.
Yeah. Well, I think to do it right, it's going to take a few years. I don't know if there's any way around it. I have chatted with so many cartoonists that I'm starting to pile up quite a lot of interviews that I've been doing on Zoom or from way back when I was just doing them over the phone or in person. Imagine doing an interview in person, but a lot of cartoonists, just to meet a deadline, will do it all digitally. But I think if they had their druthers, they would do it all hand drawn if possible. I suppose that maybe the youngest cartoonist, it's hard to generalize because everyone, it's a case by case situation.
Yeah, I mean, because of the scribing work, it went fully digital, and I've got the iPad and I use Procreate and things like that. That way of working and the fastness of it and the quick turnaround of digital, and especially within the doing live illustration, that's definitely influenced my comics work. But I was trying to keep them separate for a long time, where I started Enswell, and comics I'd done before that, self-published before that were shorter comics. I did them all on Bristol board, and I was trying to do the sort of traditional, you know, I think I even used a dip pen for quite a lot of them. And then I just settled on the humble, you know, fine liner, or a brush, Pentel brush. But now with Enswell, so 1 and 2 were all done on Bristol and then colored digitally. And Enswell 3 is all in Procreate, all of it, apart from like the first 10 pages, because I just thought, fuck it. Let's bring this kind of technology that speeds everything up into it, and you can edit very quickly. But different stuff.
Yeah, it's such a.
I can show you they're over there.
I mean, it's just a bit painstaking, but I've already committed to doing everything the traditional way, so I kind of have to stick with it now to be consistent. But yeah, it is time consuming.
But you have these lovely objects that you've made. They're not just in a computer.
Yeah.
And you paint them all with very specific inks.
Yes, inks which I don't know if it's going to be so easy to get hold of them now after Brexit. But that's another.
I think they're German, right? German inks. Yeah. You use a dip pen? No.
Yes. Yeah. It's. I think it's just that correcting part when things go wrong. It's not so easy to make your edits, and so it's quite a there's a smudge or if something goes wrong, sort of like head and hands, like, oh no.
It's like you treat every page like a painting, and I've never been able to do that. Even when I was drawing in black ink and then just scanning them and doing edits and coloring or shading after the drawing. So I never had that approach. But you're doing everything. It's like every page is a full-on kind of painted thing. Yeah. Props. Props to you.
I can certainly relate to everything you're saying. Sometimes I think to do the page totally by hand, even to add watercolor, is very European. But there's plenty of Americans who do that too. So, like I say, it's a case by case situation. Are you familiar with Simon Hanselman?
Yeah. I just got this in the mail today, in the post, as we say here.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, so I've just been reading through that today. Yeah.
Oh, he's one of my favorite cartoonists. Yeah. And I live in Seattle, so shame on me. I have yet to do an interview with him, but he does everything by hand. And he loves it. So yes, you don't lose anything by doing it by hand. I don't know that you win that much time. Sometimes it seems if you've got a really good routine and you're doing it by hand, the actual time you'd say doing it digitally might be marginal, but
that's true. And the temptation to edit, the plasticity of digital sometimes makes you a perfectionist, I guess, and you're constantly, yeah. So it can just the fiddling around with bits.
Yeah,
can that add up?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw you editing Answell, I did get this kind of wave of envy, you know, seeing how you could just like, you know, just drop in a box here, just change the text here. It's like, oh no, that's not going to happen for me.
Well, this is just so delightful. I don't want to keep you guys for too much longer, but it's such a treat. For me, Zoom is so magical. I don't know if you've ever watched on YouTube, Edward R. Murrow, you were there, where he'd be sitting with a cigarette and he'd be very casual about it. He'd be in his living room, and on a big screen, he'd have Marilyn Monroe or Adlai Stevenson or someone else, and he would just ask his questions in a very urbane way. We can do that now in our own homes. And it's so amazing. And I know that Zoom, people have got Zoom overload, and sometimes you dread Zoom, but if it's the right person, if it's the right occasion, I think it's just amazing. I mean, I would not be able to have this conversation otherwise.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, it's great. Oh, we haven't mentioned, we love your backdrop. We both commented before you hit.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, this could be like a British lion right here.
Yeah.
These are little items that I've been playing with over the last year, I guess. The clock running around. He's from Crazy Cat. Not this configuration. I think Harriman did one little clock, and so I decided to see what else I could do with the clock. And then there's the chef with the cake. And I was watching this show on Netflix. What's it called? Cake. Oh, I can't remember. It's something about Cake Squad. And the host of the show is I can't. I think it's Milk Bard. She's a well-known diva for cookies, and so she has her crew of the most amazing chefs in the world, and they're very innocent at first because, oh, here's my cake proposal. He says, well, why don't you go larger? And so I at first I had the chef with just one layer, and then I said, well, why not go larger? And so I added a few more layers. So that's a window into my crazy mind. But I just wanted to ask you about just give us a little taste about what's going on for you guys. Like, you've got Thought Bubble, I guess, that you're looking forward to, or?
Yeah, both of us.
Definitely. Yeah, so excited about it because you know, it's been like almost 2 years with like no fairs, no conventions, nothing. So yeah, it's going to be really great.
Thought Bubble is a big one as well, and it's a great like a wide array of people there, which is amazing. It's like all these different like communities, I guess, just there in the hall, and you get a lot of what's the phrase? You get a lot of like cross-pollination, or you can do if you wander around like a comics bee. You can wander around and pick up different things. It's really, Thought Bubble's really, really nice for that. Plus in the north of England, so we'll turn it into a trip, make a trip of it. Yeah, which is nice. Yeah, I've also got I've got the Lakes Comics Festival, which will be the first time I've actually done that any fair alone. I think we always table together, so that'll be interesting. It's also a really nice one. That's in October in the Lake District, which is very beautiful. So we're looking forward to things opening up a bit and having these face-to-face kind of things.
We're getting to attend a comics festival. That's a huge component of a cartoonist's life. Somebody who wants to make it a career. It's not only part of a lifestyle, it's part of moving up in and not to sound competitive or make it sound too much like a career, but then again, you do want to, if you want to take it seriously, you have to do certain things. And I don't know that you have to, but it's part of what you have to. You kind of have to.
Yeah, standing behind a table for 2 days and selling a few comics, maybe 1 an hour. You have to do that.
Well,
Yeah.
There's an artificial component to it, but it's also magical because of what could happen, the people you can meet and all that. So
I think that's one of the best
Definitely.
things.
And I think it's been really nice for sort of just making connections sort of, just around the UK as well. Like, we've met lots of new people who we've sort of tabled alongside, or people that have popped round and to our stall, and then you see them again at other fairs, and so you do build those connections.
let me just ask you, for the sake of documenting this, people seeing this years from now, where are you guys right now during the COVID lockdown situation? Are you experiencing getting to not wear a mask at all at a restaurant, or where are you at right now?
Yeah, I think in restaurants, when you're sitting down, you could take the mask off. It depends. Actually, no, that's been away for a while, hasn't it?
It's a bit complicated because the legal restrictions have gone. So legally, no one has to wear one, but the shops and maybe some of the restaurants are still imposing sort of rules about wearing them. So most people will still wear them in the supermarkets and in shops, and
definitely on the tube. TfL has made it mandatory, but other travel companies maybe haven't. But I've traveled out of London recently. People are wearing. I was wearing a mask on the train, but not everybody was. Yeah, and then you got the vaccination situation. I think we're at a point now in the UK where the rollout has gone really well, which is, considering we had cases rising and whatnot. It felt like things were going really badly. But the vaccine is one of the success stories, and if you've had the double jab, I think more people are sort of coming out of the lockdown and doing more things, and you have like the vaccine passports to show that you've got that. But yeah,
there are quite a lot of people who are still quite worried because our cases are still quite high.
They're rising. They're rising a bit lately, haven't they?
What's it like for you guys?
Very similar. A little bit of confusion. I'm in Seattle, so we kind of lean more towards a blue state mentality, at least in Seattle, but we do have a red state portion to Washington, as many states do, you can imagine. So it's politicized around the country. Some people are, well, I'm patriotic, it's God-given right not to wear a mask and all that. I kid. I don't want to alienate anyone.
No, we have a bit of that too. We have the crazy 5G conspiracy theories and things like that.
Yeah.
It feels like a minority from where we are, but
right-wing journalists calling them face nappies and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like the term, the double jab. Everyone should get the
double jab. Yeah, that's what we got here. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take up more of your time. I just thank you so much for doing this. If there's anything else you want to add, just.
I can't think of anything. Thank you. No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.